In my early 20s, I would sometimes look at my bank account and feel confused because I work hard.
Moving up to the train now?
And so why do I still feel broke? I remember that feeling clearly. Back then, I believed the problem was simple. I just wasn't earning enough money. But looking back now, I realized it was never just about income. It was the small habits I ignored every single day. And in my early 20s, I fell into the same cycle where a lot of people fall into. I spent money trying to keep up with everyone around me. I said yes to almost everything, like going out, eating out, random shopping, last minute plans. And I kept telling myself, that is fine, because I'm still young. And that time, it didn't feel serious. But slowly, without noticing, my money kept disappearing.
Empty! Empty!
I would get paid today, feel comfortable for a few days only, then suddenly wonder where it all went again. And the worst part, from the outside, I looked like I was doing okay. But internally, I felt stressed, uncertain, and stuck. And that's when I started realizing something important. Being broke in your 20s usually isn't caused by one big mistake. It's more repeated habits that slowly keep you trapped. So, in this video, I want to share the lessons I learned the hard way. These are 7 simple but powerful steps that helped me stop feeling financially lost in my early 20s and start building real control over my money. Hi, I'm Putri, and I make simple finance videos to help people in their 20s get their life together financially without feeling overwhelmed. Now, let's start with the first lesson that changed everything for me. Step number 1. Stop trying to look rich. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my early 20s was spending money to look more successful than I actually was. Everywhere I look Instagram, TikTok, people around me, it felt like everyone had their life figured out. Wearing nice clothes, went to nice restaurant, travel, perfect lifestyles. And even though I knew social media wasn't fully real, it still affected me. And a part of me kept thinking, if everyone else is living like this, maybe I should do too. So I started spending in small ways. One unnecessary purchase then became another. One treat yourself moment became a habit. And I kept justifying it. I deserve it. But what I didn't understand back then was this. You can deserve nice things and still make decisions that hurt your future financially. Because while I was trying to look comfortable, my real situation was the opposite. I was checking my bank account constantly. I am feeling stressed before payday and working hard but not actually progressing. And eventually, I had to admit it to myself. I wasn't spending to improve my life. I was spending to look like my life was already good. That realization changed everything. Because real financial progress in your 20s is usually quiet. It's saying no when you need to. It's choosing long-term peace over short-term validation. And it's building your foundation before your image. So, a lesson I had to learn the hard way in my early 20s, and you can apply to yourself today in 2026. Build financial stability before trying to look successful. Don't spend money to impress people who don't fund your life. And validation fades, but financial stability lasts. Step number 2. Fix your daily spending habits. One thing I had to learn the hard way in my early 20s was that financial stress rarely comes from one big purchase. It comes from small daily habits you barely notice. I would randomly check my bank account and think, how did I already spend that much? And I couldn't even explain to myself. Because the money wasn't disappearing at once. It always leaking slowly in small ways, like ordering Uber food for $30, buying coffee every morning for $5, saying it's just $35, small convenience spending that felt harmless. And at that time, none of it felt serious, but over weeks and months, it added up fast. I remember realizing one day that ordering food just a few times a week was costing me more than 100 every month. And that changed how I saw everything. Because suddenly I understood small habits are not small when they repeat. That money could have been for my saving, or my investment, or emergency protection, or just peace of mind. So I stopped trying to fix everything overnight. Instead, I made small real estate change. I learned a few simple meals I actually enjoyed. I became more aware of my spending, and slowly I stopped feeling out of control. And what surprised me most was being more responsible with money didn't make my life worse, it made it calm. Because this isn't about restriction, it's about intention. And every small spending habit is shaping your future, either building stability or quietly keeping you stuck. And to make sure I don't go back to that old version of myself, I started choose 2 to 3 simple meals that I enjoy and repeat them weekly. I also track my spending for 7 days, and the result, I have gained control without feeling restricted. Step number 3. Be selective with entertainment. One of the biggest pressures in my early 20s was feeling like I always had to say yes. There was always something happening: birthdays, dinners, nights out, concerts. And if I stayed home, it felt like I was missing out. So I said yes automatically, even when I was tired, or even when I didn't want to spend money, or even when I knew I shouldn't. But over time, I realized something important. That cycle is exhausting because you spend money to enjoy yourself, then feel stress afterward, then repeat it again. Stress, spending, regret, repeat. Eventually, I learned something simple. Not every invitation deserves a yes. And that changed everything. I stopped attending everything. I stopped spending just to keep up. And I started choosing intentionally instead of emotionally. That didn't mean I stopped enjoying my life. I still went out, I still saw my friends, I still made memories, but I stopped sacrificing my peace and my finances for constant stimulation. And honestly, some of the best decisions I made were the night I stayed in. Because staying in sometimes means learning something that improves your future, or planning your goals properly, or resetting mentally, or protecting your finances, or simply resting. Because a lot of people spend money just to avoid feeling left out. But temporary entertainment should never cause long term stability. The people who become financially strong usually learn this early. Every unnecessary yes today becomes financial pressure tomorrow. And I realized something important. Missing one event is temporary, but financial stress lasts much longer. I can still enjoy life, just without damaging my progress, and I've learned to say not this time without guilt. Step number 4. Upgrade your environment. One thing I completely underestimated in my early 20s was how much my environment was shaping my mindset, habits, and my decision. At that time, I believed my choices were completely my own. But looking back now, I realize the people I spent time with, the conversation I had, and even the content I consumed were influencing me far more than I understood. Because if you constantly surround yourself with people who spend without thinking, complain but never change, avoid responsibility, normalize bad habits eventually, that starts to feel normal to you too. Not because you choose it consciously, but because you adapt to what's around you. And that's exactly what happened to me for a while. I started thinking smaller, I made more emotional decisions, I stayed stuck in the same patterns. Not because I lacked potential, but because my environment wasn't pushing me forward. Then things slowly started to change when I became intentional about what I exposed myself to. I started listening to people who talk about growth, financial awareness, discipline, skill, and self improvement, and building something long term instead of just reacting to life. And without realizing it, my mindset started shifting. I began asking different questions. How can I improve my situation? Or how can I earn more? And what skills should I learn? How do I think long term? And that shift changed everything. Because upgrading your environment doesn't always mean cutting people off. Sometimes it just means expanding your world. It can start online, it can start with better conversation, it can start with what you choose to listen to every day. So, to avoid repeating my old habits, I started reminding myself what you choose consume every day shapes you how you think. Growth becomes easier when you are surrounded by a better influences. Small changes in your environment slowly change your entire mindset. Step number 5. Build your own life first. One mistake I almost made in my early 20s was slowly building my entire life around other people. And the truth is, it happens very easily. When you care about someone, you naturally start adjusting your time, priorities, and energy around them. And at first, it feels normal, even exciting. But over time, I started noticing something dangerous. I was slowly losing myself without realizing it. My goals got pushed aside, my routines disappeared, my focus shifted away from my own growth, and little by little, I stopped building my own future properly. And the scary part is, you don't always notice it while it's happening. You only realize it when something changes. And suddenly, you are left asking, what do I actually have for myself? That realization changed how I view relationship completely. Because I learned something important. Loving someone and building yourself should happen at the same time, not instead of each other. You can love someone, you can build a relationship, you can care deeply, but you should never stop building your identity in the process. Because the healthiest relationships are built between two people who already have direction, not two people trying to complete each other. And especially in your early 20s, your responsibility is to build your own foundation first. That's mean developing skills, improving financially, building confidence, learning independence, creating goals that belong to you. Because when you build yourself properly first, you stop choosing relationships out of fear, pressure, or loneliness, and you start choosing from confidence. So I start reminding myself, don't lose yourself while building a relationship. Keep building your own goals, confidence, and future. Step number 6. Learn how money actually works. One thing I regret in my early 20s was avoiding money instead of learning how it works. At the time, money stressed me out so much that I chose to ignore it completely. I wouldn't check my bank account properly. I didn't track my spending. I avoided budgeting because it felt overwhelming. And deep down, I kept hoping things would somehow themselves out. But eventually, I realized something important. Money doesn't improve through avoidance, it improves through awareness. And the turning point for me was something very simple. I started writing down everything I spent, not roughly, not mentally, but honestly and clearly. And for the first time, I could actually see where my money was going. And it was uncomfortable at first because I noticed the patterns I had been ignoring, like emotional spending, convenience spending, impulsive decision, and the habits that draining my money every week. And before that, I thought the problem was just not earning enough. But in reality, I had no awareness or system at all. And once I understood my spending clearly, everything became less confusing because awareness creates control. Most people stay financially stressed not because they earn too little, but because they never fully face their habits. But once you see everything clearly, you stop guessing, you stop reacting emotionally, you stop feeling powerless, and you start making intentional decisions. And you don't need to be a finance expert. You just need simple system like tracking, budgeting, saving intentionally, and planning ahead. And those small habits change everything. And that's when I started telling myself to track your money honestly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Learn basic financial habits before money problems become bigger. Because the more awareness you build, the more control and peace you create. Now, step number 7. Build income beyond your job. One of the biggest mindset shifts I had in my early 20s was realizing that relying on a single income source can quietly keep you stuck. At first, I thought having a job meant I was secure. You work, you get paid, you repeat. And while that covers your basics need, I realized it doesn't automatically create freedom because you are still trading time directly for money. And if that one income ever stops or changes, your entire stability is affected. And that realization changed how I started thinking. I stopped seeing my early 20s as just a working pace, and I started seeing it as a building pace where a time to experiment, learn, and develop skills. Because this is where you try new things, explore different paths, build valuable skills, learn what actually works for you, and not everything will work. Some ideas will fail, and some skills will take time, or some attempts will go nowhere. But none of that is wasted. That's experience. Because sometimes just one real skill, can completely change your income and your future. And for me, the shift happened when I stopped thinking only about earning today and started focusing on building skills that could earn long time. Skills like communication, digital work, freelancing, sales, and problem solving. And the specific skill matters less than the consistency of learning something valuable. Because skills create option, and option create freedom. And eventually, I realized this. One skill can completely change your income and your future. Progress matters more than getting everything perfect immediately, and skills create options, and option create freedom. So, looking back at my early 20s, this is what I wish someone told me earlier. Being broke in your 20s is more normal than people admit. Most people are still figuring life out. Most people are making mistakes. Most people feel financially lost at some point. I definitely do and did. But what keeps people stuck for years isn't the mistakes. It's staying in the same cycle without changing anything, or same habits, same thinking, same patterns, and over again. And slowly, that becomes your life. But the good news is, you don't need to change everything at once. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. We just need to become more aware. One better decision, one better habit, one shift in direction. Because those small changes don't feel powerful in the moment, but over time, they quietly build a completely different life. And looking back now, I truly believe this. The way you handle money in your 20s doesn't just affect your bank account, it shapes your stress, your freedom, your confidence, and the opportunities you will have in your 30s. So, start now, start small, stay consistent, and keep building from that.